tutorial is going to be talking all about quilting, and hopefully we're going to get a nice little project together and sew a placemat, a patchwork placemat. But before we do that, you might have noticed that Janet's here. So Janet, tell us about your quilting.
Well, I got into quilting quite by accident. I just wanted to do something different than dressmaking, and soft furnishings was my sort of cup of tea really. So I started off with little projects, thinking I had to make a quilt, but actually you don't. You can make all sorts of things with patchworking. And so I went into books. This is one of my little books I've made. Jewellery rolls, which are quite nice for the children because you can put all their little bits and pieces in, and handbags, which is one of my passions, and these are all Liberty, Liberty, and then quilts, of course. This was one of my first ones I did. I'll have a look at that one.
Let's have a look,
and it looks quite a complicated design, but it isn't. When you actually look, they're pieces that are joined on.
So it's each little bit is a piece of geometry.
Piece, yeah.
And then just added together.
And you make one square. You don't have to make the whole thing. And I used to sort of think, oh, you had to do angles. You do angles, but it's just, when you actually look at it, that this piece here, it's just, that's one piece, and then just these are little tiny quarters that you sew on. But they're done. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. If you get a good pattern, then it's easy.
Well, what about this one over here? I really like this one. Should we bring that one across?
Yeah. This is called postage stamp, I think, postage stamp quilts. And each square is 2.5 inches square, and I teamed it with a Jane Austen quote fabric. And it's just so enjoyable to do, and it's quick. It's not. It looks as if you've got to sew every little square.
To be fair, it would take me years to do something like this.
You can do it in strips and blocks.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Well, let's have a lock at our project and see what we're going to do today. Okay, Janet. So today's project is a placemat. Do you want to take us through what we need?
Right. So I'm not quite sure what size this is. I'll measure it in a minute. But we will need. We're going to use jelly rolls. Jelly rolls come all pre-cut like this. They're 2.5 inch width, and they're the width of the fabric. It makes a job really easy to do because you've only got to do one cut as opposed to lots and lots of cuts. We need a contrast fabric to go with it. I do like the linen because it gives it a fresh look.
So that fills in the gaps.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we need a backing fabric, which we will then have the edging on as well, the binding, and that's not bias, it's cut on the straight because we can fold it over and you're only going around corners and not going around curves. Then we've got the wadding. You can use this. I like this wadding. It's like a wool, a cotton wool I think it is, and it washes really well. Or you can use the bosal, and this is double-sided. It's lovely to work with. It's double-sided fusible, and it gives structure to your project.
So when you say fusible, you need to iron this onto your fabric?
Yes, yeah. So this one is double-sided. You can get single-sided, and you can get sewing ones as well.
Smashing.
That's it.
Okay, so let's start our project. Going back to these jelly rolls, we've laid all ours out here. But I think the whole point of jelly rolls is that as we only need the ends to get our 2 inch squares, 2.5 inch, sorry, 2.5 inch squares, you can just cut the ends off of each one, and then your jelly rolls kept just like that. So it keeps everything nice and neat. But the first step of our project is to iron all our fabric flat. So we're going to do that. Janet's informed me the next step is to cut our squares into 2.5 inch squares. So we're using our little OmniGrid thing, and we're leaving a little bit for us to trim the end of our jelly roll strips. So 2.5 inches.
Turn it on. No, the other way. Go from the bottom down. With your fingers. Always turn it off in between.
This is very safety,
Sorry,
very,
it's just
very
that I know
safety
from
conscious.
experience. Make sure those lines are together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're cutting these in pairs because that's how it comes.
And we're going to make another mat.
So I'm using the mat as well as the OmniGrid just to double check my measurements. So 2.5 inches. And it's very important to get it really accurate. The more accurate it is, the better your project's going to turn out.
Bear in mind, when you've cut these out, these were 2.5 inch squares. When they're sewn together, we're going to use 1/4 inch seam. So in fact, these will all then become 2 inches, 2 inch squares. So we're roughly going to make this 15 inches by 13, the background fabric. Because when it's quilted, we've got a little bit to play around with, and then we can trim it up afterwards when we've done, when we've got it all together. So bearing in mind, you've got to sort of measure this. Remember, these are going to be 2 inches, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then we're going to join those in strips, then these two together, and then we've got to then work out the size of this.
Okay.
Okay.
So if we measure that, so we've got 2, 4, 6 inches, and it's 6 inches. What was the right thing?
But then you've got
and then we need a 1/4 inch seam at each end.
Yeah.
So that'd be
6.5
inches.
Yeah.
From our middle line fabric.
Yeah.
Linen.
And then it's the.
And then that way.
Yeah.
So that'd be 2, 4 inches. So that would be 4.5 inches for that middle piece.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we cut those out then?
Yep, we would. We're going to join these five together, then those two separately. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're going to join that to that, and then that to that, and that to that. Okay.
Well, let's get that done.
Let's start piecing together the 2.5 inch squares, and we're going to chain piece. So we take the first two, line them up as best as you can, place it underneath, down. Before you get to the end, keep the needle down still, get the next two, foot up, and down. So obviously we've got 5, so we've got the odd one there. We'll take these two. So that's our 5 pieces sewn, and now we're going to take them over to the ironing board. We're going to press the seams all in one direction. That's it, that's our first strip done. Put the needle down, that's better. No, sorry, the top line, that's it, yeah.
Okay, and then lastly, and then all in one direction. Same direction. Okay, so the next step, Janet.
We join that to that and that to that.
Okay, over to the machine.
Right, we've got the middle section with the 2 side pieces on. Now we're going to join the top piece to the middle, and we're going to nest the seams and put a pin in, and this one. The seams have to meet together, and it's called nesting, so you have to make sure that if you look at it there, it's going to join up and sit nicely. Just put a pin in.
And what about the seam allowances? Does one go one way and one go the other?
Yes, one goes one way and one goes the other. And then you put a pin in there. But also I find that when you're sewing it, if you you can feel it as well. You can feel that little notch when you get to there, and then that should be perfect.
So not only does it help reduce the amount of bulk that the needle has to go through when you're sewing,
Yeah.
it makes it nice and flat
you just want
for
to
your
try
project.
and get a perfect, a perfect sort of sitting in there. One like that, one like that, and just put a few pins in to hold it. Shall I do that?
Yeah, pin them into place. Okay, so now we've got our top finished, it's time to create our sandwich, isn't it, Al?
Mm-hmm.
And so the underside fabric face down, then our wadding or batting in the middle, and our top nicely lined up on top. And we were discussing, weren't we, Janet, about how we're going to quilt
How we're
it.
going to quilt. There's so many different ways of quilting. You can do lines, you could do sort of quilting at a diagonal, making it into diamonds or something like that. Or we could do straight lines down here, which look quite nice, and across, which I've done on some of my other projects.
So when you say straight lines, you mean
It's
like do a tram line, one either side of the
one either
stitch
side of the
seam.
seam, yeah.
Oh, I like the sound of that. Should we do that one?
Yeah, we do that one, yeah. So we finished the quilting.
So Janet has finished the quilting, and now I've prepared the binding. So what I've done here is I've just sewed it together, and it's not bias, so you don't have to cut it to stitch it on the slope, on the angle, and then I've ironed it in half. Okay, so Janet says I've got to trim this to size, the size that I like.
Yes.
Which is, what did we say it was?
But I think this one was 13 and a half by 11 and a half.
So now we've finished. Well,
The
now
quilting.
Janet's finished quilting the project. What are we going to do with this
We're
binding?
going to start the binding. So we're going to start it about here. We need to leave a tail because we've got to join that when we've gone all the way round. So
Okay.
we need a little bit to play around with. So we're going to go round like this, and then when we get to here, we've got to mite the corner.
Okay, so we're going to put this on with a 1/4 inch seam?
With a 1/4 inch seam, yeah. So when we've got down, we've not gone right to the edge of the fabric, then we pull the fabric over that way and make an angle, and then make sure that's right in the corner, and then bring this one back down again so it's all nice and level, and put it back under the machine. And we're ready to go. And there you've got your mited corner.
Okay, to finish off your binding, we need to basically just match them up, your two tails. You see it's not joined here. Your two tails, and then you can pin it, you can mark it with chalk, however you wish to do it. This is my little cheeky tip, as I just press a crease into there, and there's my mark. And you can see, if I sew that accurately, that's the seam I'll be left with. When we open it up, pull that tight, that sits flat there, and there's our seam.
Right, we've finished with the binding, we've gone all the way round and joined the seam. Now we're going to, I normally give it just a little bit of a press to get that all straight. We're going to turn it over, and then we're going to do a little bit of hand sewing. You can do it by machine, but I actually like it done by hand. And what we're going to do, we have to press those down to make our mitered corners.
Well, there's the completed
Placemat.
placemat. Thank you, Janet. And I've just finished it off by stitching in a ditch to catch the underside of the binding. And I think it makes a fantastic little project. So now all you have to do is make another 5 more, unless you've got a really big family, and then it's another 7 more. But I'll leave that for you. Thank you very much, Janet, for helping me and being my mentor in all my quilting projects.
I'm not perfect. I've only picked this up myself from books and YouTube.
Oh yeah, so. I can tell you're not perfect by looking around. They're amazing, these projects. And if you need any inspiration, just have a look around this sewing room. So thanks very much for watching Dizzy Sew and Sew. Don't forget to subscribe by pressing that button there. And if there are any other videos you want to watch, I shall put them here.